Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to everybody. Hi, Ron. Welcome
Hi.
everybody to this important session. Well, it's not important to probably to a lot of people, but it's interesting to me and to Ron, and hopefully to all of you as well. So, welcome to Yoga of Knowledge, this first session on this Tuesday morning, at least for me. Um, Maybe to start with, I'd like to introduce the context of this conversation. We met in Dublin. I didn't know anything about Ron. He was a consultant in my former organization. Um, the only reason I know Ron is because we had hired him for a contract for my former organization, and I knew him as somebody who was very experienced in KM. So when I talked to him and just wanted to meet him, I said, "Oh, how are you?" and all that. When did you get it? And we asked about each other, and he told me, "Oh, actually, I'm also a yoga practitioner." I said, "Oh, really? How long have you been doing?" And he said, "40 years." Is that right, Ron? 40
Yeah,
years. I said, "Oh,
more or
that's a
less.
lot of
Yeah.
yoga." And then so I told him I was a yoga teacher as well and all that. And so, but the thing that caught my attention was that normally people get into yoga because of the stress, the calming of the stress and the stress reduction part of it. But with Ron, his interest in yoga was he went into yoga first, got to know about the principles of knowledge, and because of that, that led him to knowledge management. Whereas for me, it was the other way around. I got into knowledge management first. I mean, I knew about yoga, but I got into knowledge management for something else because of the work and all that. But I used yoga to help me be more for the resilience part, the stress reduction part. But for Ron, it was the opposite, and that really intrigued me. And he said to me that all these knowledge stuff already appeared in yogic principles. So that was the reason for this conversation. I said, really? And there it hit me that there is some kind of it makes sense that there is this that I'm interested in it because of all the self-knowledge that goes into yoga and of course with self-knowledge that goes with knowledge with working with other people. So Ron, tell us again your connection with this particular topic.
Okay, Nina. And you'd like me to sort of briefly talk about the theory that we talked
Yes,
about? Yeah.
yes.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm very glad to be here today. I didn't think I'd be talking about the yoga of knowledge, but it makes a great change. I think it will hopefully be a lot of fun. It's certainly in this Knowledge Week, a different way of looking at knowledge. And I hope I might even be able to get you to think that unless you're already deep into yoga, you might even think there's a different way of looking at knowledge and the way we are working as practitioners. So, yes, 40 years ago was a long time ago. And I'm speaking from Cambridge, near Cambridge, UK, from my home. Um, and I think basically we started to talk about the fact that I was saying there's a great similarity between yoga, the yoga of knowledge, which I'll explain in a moment what I mean by that, and knowledge management. And it started for me because I wanted to become a yoga and meditation teacher with the British Wheel of Yoga here in the UK, which is still exists today. It's a 2-year diploma course. And one of the requirements is that you have to actually learn, at least be aware of the ancient yogic texts, because some of the teaching, particularly in the meditation, some of the teaching goes back to deep philosophy of yoga. And so I went there quite innocently to learn about the ancient yogic texts. And I never realized that that would have a big impact on my knowledge management practice, the way I look at knowledge management, and my life, actually. So the first thing I'm saying, I'm not going to talk about the spiritual side or the religious side. I'm looking at it today through the lens of a knowledge management practitioner. But to do that, I have to say a few things. what is this? This term yoga of knowledge, some of you who are not familiar might think this is a new term that we've invented. No, it's not. It's actually 3,000 years ago. The term jnana yoga, jnana means knowledge in Sanskrit, and the term jnana yoga goes back 3,000 years. And it's based on what's called Vedic science, a very established science, if you like, and philosophy. There are four things I just want to mention, four components of this science, which really made me think differently about knowledge management. The first is called the Vedas themselves. Veda in Sanskrit also means knowledge. And the ancient Vedas were around about, initially, they were just sort of, I made some notes here really. I would say they were rituals, they were hymns, they were observations, they were practices, they were symbolic actions at the time in India. Little bit like we have different rituals and different practices and different cultures within our organizations and multinational organizations or whatever. When we refer to good practices and big practices, the equivalent there would be the Vedas, the ancient texts. But the next component of four is called Vedanta. Vedanta means in Sanskrit the last part of the Vedas, or the last part of knowledge. And whereas the Vedas are like rituals and practices, Vedanta is the essence of the Vedas distilled into principles. The distillation of the knowledge, if you like, it's almost like an intellectual framework, if you like. And the Vedanta, the culmination of what's said in the Vedas, this idea of just distilling the essence of any observations, reflecting on them, and then developing principles appealed to me. The third of the four is called the Upanishads. Within that last part of the Vedas, Upanishad in Sanskrit literally means sitting at the feet of the guru, or at least being near to, so you can teach this. It's one thing to have the knowledge, it's another thing to distill it into principles, and then the next stage is to actually start to teach it. And that's what was done with the Upanishads. Initially, they were secret knowledge, deep esoteric knowledge, if you like, and it was not really meant for the masses at the time or the public. But it was really reserved for those people who were sincere, dedicated, genuine, and devoted to wanting to learn. That was really what the Upanishads are. So you've got the Vedas, the broad rituals and practices distilled into principles. Within that, you've got the Upanishads, which are a series of teachings. Apparently, there's over 200, but there's 108 that are pretty well known. And the most popular one that you may already know, of course, is the Bhagavad Gita. That's the most popular Upanishad. And the final bit of the theory is that actually it was felt for quite a long time that it's not very easy to understand, even the Upanishads and the principles. It's very difficult for people to understand it. So along came a sage later, Sage Panjali. And I had to learn as a yoga teacher Panjali's sutras. Sutra is like a thread, a string. So you break the Upanishads into threads and strings, and then you can put them back together into a more cohesive thought. Now, at the time when I was a yoga teacher, I didn't pay too much attention to that. I felt, yes, I know the Vedas, I know the Vedanta, I know the Upanishads, I know the sutras enough to teach it. But I guess it was then that I realized that when I got into knowledge management, the similarity, if you like, the similarity, the difference, there's actually a thread here, isn't there? There's, if you look at modern knowledge management, if you look at the ancient ways that they were looking at knowledge, experience leads to reflection, leads to developing some principles or the essence of that. And then we try to codify it in a way which we can teach it better, where we can transmit it, the transmission. So experience, reflection, principle, codification, and transmission made a lot of sense to me as a yoga practitioner, as a knowledge management practitioner. That's what I felt, gosh, both are trying to transform, we're trying to transform experience in the workplace into knowledge. We're trying to codify that knowledge and hopefully some wisdom into a better shareable form, make explicit what we can, especially from that tacit knowledge within, and to try to transmit what we can for reuse and to recontextualize it if appropriate in new environments. So that is the theory, if you like. And Jnana Yoga is just one of the three classical fields of yoga that is about knowledge, the philosophy of knowledge, how knowledge is actually created and disseminated. And that's what really, really appealed to me. And that was really what I was saying to Nina. And that started the discussion off because Nina comes from a different view of yoga as well. And so shall I stop there for the moment, Nina?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ron. And when Ron was saying about a different kind of yoga, the yoga that I teach is called Kundalini yoga. And it's whereas Ron's kind of yoga is more about self-knowledge, observation, philosophical knowledge, and all that.
Yeah.
Mine is more about a path that's dedicated to spiritual energy that supposedly is supposed to be stuck at the base of our spine. And they say it's a source of energy that we have that's dormant and it just needs to be awakened. And so all of the kriyas and the practices we do in Kundalini Yoga is all about trying to raise that energy or spiritual energy that's supposed to go through our spine all the way to the top of our head, which if you know a little bit of yoga, at the seventh chakra is about crown, the crown of the head is about enlightenment. So once you get all that energy out here, then you're completely enlightened and you know exactly what you need to do to live an authentic and purposeful life. So that's basically the kind of it's all about energy, consciousness, and awakening of all that limitless energy. Can you imagine? We don't know we have it. We actually do, but it's just sitting there and dormant. So there's a difference with what I practice and also from Hatha yoga, which everybody practices. Most people practice. And also there's other kinds of yoga now, so Bikram and Ashtanga yoga and all that. But with Ron, of course, what was interesting was the connection to knowledge management. Ron, do you want to go ahead and go to your 10 quotes that we wanted
Yeah,
to
sure.
focus on here?
Sure. So once I started to see the connection between the way we were managing knowledge today in the 21st century and the way they were managing knowledge in 3,000 years ago, I started to talk about this when I was lecturing at universities. And I think it was in the early 2000s. I can't remember the exact year. I was lecturing at Cranfield School of Management in the UK. And we got onto this topic, and I was speaking with various academics, and I gave them a little challenge, which was I gave them 10 statements, some of which came from the Vedas, the Upanishadic knowledge, Vedanta, and some came from modern management gurus. And I asked them if they could differentiate between them. That ended up with a lot of discussion and realization about knowledge. So I just thought for a bit of fun, I might do the same for you, just checking the time. If I take 10 minutes, I'll just give you 10 slides, some of which are direct quotes from the Vedas, but of course I've had to put them into modern language. If I do the direct quotes, you'll know immediately. And some come from the modern. And of course, it may be the case that you may say, well, that could have come from the ancients, but and our modern gurus are saying the same thing. In other words, the timeless principles. A true principle should be timeless and changeless. So what applied 3,000 years ago, you could argue, should still apply today. Anyway, let's see if I can get the technology to share the 10 slides. What I'll do is I'll give you a short time to just look at a slide and write down, if you can, for each of the 10 slides, A, if it's ancient. If you think it's an ancient quote, A. If you think it's modern, M will do. And after I've quickly gone through that and given you a few seconds, I'll share with you where they come from, and then we can take it from there. So let's see if I can share my screen. So
If you want, you can also put your answers in the chat, question by question.
yes, have I got any sharing yet? Let's try again. Share.
So we should put M?
A for ancient, M for modern.
Okay, so thank you.
Is that okay? I'm hoping you can see that, can you?
Yep.
And it's not blocking. All right. Let's see. I've called it the Timeless Wisdom Challenge. Okay. I'm only going to give you a few seconds, so it might just be an intuitive feel, but here we go. Here's the first of 10. I'll read them as well. Oh, I think I can. Just a moment. Here we go. The first one is the highest form of professional engagement is found in working without attachment to the final result, focusing purely on the quality of the action itself. That's just to get us started. The highest form of professional engagement is found in working without attachment to the final result, focusing purely on the quality of action itself. That's number one. Number two, before you can innovate or lead, you must still that constant noise of your inner monologue. Quiet clarity is the prerequisite for effective operation.
That sounds pretty obvious.
You want to say something, don't you? You can't. Okay, we'll move to number 3 of 10.
Or
To grow
remember, please
fully.
count how many wrongs you got, and that way you'll know.
Yes.
Take into note. Yeah, take into account. Yeah.
To grow fully, we must recognize both what we know and what we do not know. We must recognize fully both what we know and what we do not. Number 4. Knowledge is the one form of wealth that cannot be taken away. Knowledge is the one form of wealth that cannot be taken away. Number 5, the highest knowledge is that which points to timeless principles. The highest knowledge is that which points to timeless principles. Were any of those 5 ancient or modern only, or perhaps you might think both? Number 6, knowledge, like fire, spreads from one person to another. Knowledge, like fire, spreads from one person to another. Number 7, the capacity for profound change is activated not through incremental improvement, profound change, but by fully realizing the perfection that already underlies the current situation. You might want to read that a little again. Number 8, sorry. You must recognize that your consciousness is the singular, unchanging context for all the changeable thoughts and sensory inputs that flow from it. That's quite a heavy one.
Complicated.
Yeah. I'll read it again. You must recognize that your consciousness is the singular, unchanging context for all the changeable thoughts and sensory inputs that flow from it. And the next one, number 9, is knowledge is not just information, but it's the power to act.
I want to know where that's from.
Knowledge is not just information, it's the power to act. And the final one, number 10, knowledge must be renewed and expanded or it fades away. Knowledge must be renewed and expanded or it fades away. So they're the 10. I hope you've got an A or an M, or maybe you've got A and M. So I'll now briefly go through the 10, just giving you the references and what they are, ancient or modern. And if anybody's interested and wants to know further, just let us know and we will give you even more information about it. Okay, so let's see what number 1 was. It comes from the Bhagavad Gita.
So ancient.
Ancient. It comes from ancient. Some might argue that it's also being practiced, and modern management gurus are saying that we should focus on that. I'll leave that for a moment. The next one, ancient. The Katha Upanishad. Number 3, to grow fully, we must recognize both what we know and what we do not. That comes from the Vedas, the Yajur Veda. And in one of the other Upanishads called the Ishvara Upanishad, it says that says knowledge and ignorance both are necessary. He who knows both together crosses death through ignorance and attains immortality through knowledge. Obviously, if I put those words, you would have guessed what it was straight away. Number 4, again, comes from the Vedas. Knowledge in the Vedas, in the Atharva Veda, it says knowledge is the best wealth. It cannot be stolen, no tax is levied upon it, and it does not cause any burden. You may agree or disagree with that. Number 5, again, ancient. The highest knowledge is that which points to timeless principles. The Mundaka Upanishad actually says there are 2 kinds of knowledge, and 2 kinds of knowledge must be known, higher and lower, according to that. The lower knowledge is the knowledge of the Vedas. The higher is that by which the imperishable is known, which points towards principles which are timeless and changeless. Number 6, again, it comes from the ancient. Knowledge like fire spreads from one person to another, but of course that's quite often quoted today in modern management terms. Number 7 is modern. The capacity for profound change is activated not through incremental improvement, but by fully realizing the perfection that already underlies. That comes from appreciative inquiry, which tends to focus more on identifying rather what's the best of what is, rather than fixing what is wrong. Number 8 is modern. It comes from cognitive psychology, neuroscience. You must recognize that your consciousness is the singular, unchanging context. The reason I mentioned that one is much of modern, at least Western thoughts about consciousness might disagree with that, but this is a modern guru approach, not neuroscience approach. Knowledge is not just information, it's the power to act. That clearly is in both, but it's embedded throughout the Vedas. The path of action, the Isa Upanishad, directly addresses the relationship between knowledge and action. And it actually suggests that the two, knowledge and action, are not to be separated. And it promotes a path where one must live for 100 years performing actions without becoming attached to their results. And the final one, knowledge must be renewed and expanded or it fades away. I think that's both, but that's how the Vedas end. I wanted to make that point, or the Upanishads. The final instruction that's given to students in the Upanishads upon graduation is self-study, the study of one's own self and the sacred texts for them. Do not neglect, do not fail, do not be negligent. So how did you do? Can I stop sharing now? There we are.
Anybody want to say?
Let's just get a feel for, did anybody get 10 out of
8
10?
of 10.
8 out of 10.
10.
That's incredibly good. Excellent. Excellent. Any other volunteers?
So I can't say. I think it's more or less the same as Brett, but I didn't really track. But I think like I missed one or two.
Yeah. Yeah. What I really like is there's the Kena Upanishad that says, he who thinks he knows, knows not. He who knows that he cannot know, truly knows. I think we hear that with modern gurus, do we, as well? Has anybody heard that with modern gurus? I think I love that one.
We have to write that down in a slide, Ron.
Yeah, it's the Kena Upanishad. I can send copies of the slides. I can send references to anybody who may want to look at that a bit deeper or just reflect on that. But it's the Kena Upanishad which says, he who thinks he knows, knows not. He who knows that he cannot know, truly knows.
And
the paradox.
That is so consistent with knowledge management, isn't it? He who thinks that he cannot know, knows not. I mean, it's this ability of knowing that you don't know or being conscious that you don't know a lot yet and that there's still a lot to know.
Yeah.
I mean, we say it a lot too here in modern times, but what is surprising for me after hearing all your 10 quotes is most of them are from the ancient text. And it sounds really like, so basically what we're saying here in modern times is actually something that comes out from 3 centuries ago.
Yeah.
So we're just really repackaging stuff.
Yeah, as I say, for me, it was just a realization that knowledge process, if you like, the ancient knowledge life cycle, experience that's captured, and then reflection on that experience and observation leads to distillation and hopefully development of principles, which then we want to teach through. And one way we tried to do it was the best codification we can and transmission. And it just occurred to me that, for example, the sutras, the little threads, today we have blogs, today we have social media posts, and they can be and often are little threads of knowledge that we're trying to put together into a more coherent form. And so as Linus was saying to me the other day, it seems that we've always known the what and why, but the how has changed. Is that right? You know, now we're using different technologies, but the fundamental process to me seems to be the same as it was 3,000 years ago, but we do it in faster ways. I don't know what you think of that.
What was surprising for me, Ron, was the number 9 where it's, oh no, number 8 where it says you are not your thoughts, because I thought that was a yogic principle where
Yeah, it is.
you're able to separate yourself and
It is. Yeah.
your thought, you are not your thought. So you can manage it, you can tame it, you can let it go away or not.
Um, yes, indeed, you're right to point that out. And part of the reason for meditation initially is to start with relaxing our body, our mind, stilling our mind. But the purpose really for stilling our mind is so that we can actually then get deeper insights, deeper reflection. You can't reflect and have deep insights if you're highly stressed. If you're a knowledge worker, any methods, tools, and techniques that can quieten you down, relax you, remove the stress, give more clarity, give you more focus, if you like. That must be great for knowledge work, and certainly it's worked for me.
And in connection to that, to be able to have new insights, you need to create space for that new insight to come out. Whereas if it's all full of stuff that you actually don't need, you need to detox all that to be able to create space, hold space, so that all that new insight can connect. And through meditation, you can do that. Any comments from our guests? Anything weird or a little bit out of, I don't know.
I think it's a slightly different
this is Brett.
Yes,
I
Brett.
can see that I can see the value of this if for no other reason when you're sitting alone in your room in the dark after a rough day at work because your mission partner just doesn't get it and you get frustrated and you're like, this is the most basic, simple thing ever, and I don't understand why this is difficult. And you need something like this to kind of reset you and say, okay, tomorrow will be better. I'll be okay, and to that quote about the ancient texts, the one you added at the end, there's actually a parallel for us because as knowledge managers, each of us has read several books written by either peers of ours, colleagues of ours, or previous practitioners that sometimes you just have to go back to one of those books and pull it out and say, okay, I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing, but let me double check with what Larry Prusek said or what Nick Milton said, just to make sure I'm not completely jacked up. Uh,
Yeah.
So it isn't an ancient text in the context of the quote, but it's still, it's still a necessary thing to be able to reach back into some of the published work that from people contemporaries in some cases, most cases, because our profession is not that old, but are still seminal in either the thoughts that they purport or the ideas that they bring forward, or just the perspective. Like the KM Cookbook is a perspective of the ISO 30401. It's
Yeah.
obviously not the answer to it, but if you're trying to implement, some aspect of it, reaching back to that book will get you rethinking about, what that analogy and see how do I use that analogy to advance the thing. So just a thought.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett. Any other comments, reflections, things that come up as you hear these knowledge quotes? Marco, did you want to say something?
Sure. Just the thought that, again, it's ancient knowledge passed down obviously influences what we're doing today. And so it's easy to see these connections. And again, we're continually learning and making the same mistakes, but we're growing along the way. All this has happened before and all this will happen again. That just resonated with me through this.
Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Shay Byrne, Barry's son. I practiced yoga for a long time. I don't practice it the same way now, but the silencing of the inner conversation, I often felt, I spent a long time doing that. And then I realized, and I mean, it wasn't a realization that was new, it was an old realization that really what you're looking for essentially is what is looking, that within you is the ability to see. And that seeing is also what they call the consciousness. It was mentioned in one of the pieces there. I had them all as ancient. And I think that was a mistake because I was ignoring the language of some of the modern stuff. Okay.
Thanks, Shay. Nice to hear from you. And yes, yeah. I guess that's
Thank
what
you.
yoga is about, right? It's a journey inwards so you can hear yourself, you can know more about the way your thoughts are going, the way your feelings are, that you gain self-knowledge, self-reflection, self-observation even, because a lot of the times we're completely oblivious of how we are. And I guess the goal, at least for me, from my learning, is that the more we know of ourselves, the more we're able to know how to see the world the way we would like to see it, or see how others see it related to how we see ourselves. So it definitely, self-knowledge is good for us to be able to relate to others better. So so it's an inward process, which involves a lot of reflection, and that's what knowledge management is about, isn't it? It's not just a lot of doing. We need to stop, reflect, learn, and then do again, or fine tune it, and then do something different to make it to make a change. So questions or comments to that, or whatever comes up, feel free.
Yeah, for me, the detoxing part was also interesting in the sense that it's relevant nowadays with all the social media apps, and we need to clear our heads after consuming so much information, and the capacity to unlearn and relearn is very useful, although it's difficult to admit that you don't know and that you need to actually refresh your knowledge in a particular context, and yeah, so in a moment. So this capacity is really important to unlearn and then relearn based on the context and the needs in the moment.
Thank you. Was that Stella? Is that you? Okay.
Yes, it's me.
Yes. Thanks, Stella. Yes, it's this thing of not knowing. And I think that coincides a lot with the ability of being curious. If you don't know, then you're going to be curious to ask. And I guess that's curiosity is an integral skill that knowledge managers have to have, isn't it? To know more, to learn more. Anybody else? Oh, and the detox, I completely agree. I learned in the neuroscience course that I took last year that the brain needs space to be able to process whatever information it has processed. For example, if you go from webinar to webinar, back to back, you have to take a break, because whatever information that the brain takes in, and we take up a lot every second of the day, the brain needs time to encode whatever information goes in there. So we have to almost be intentional about putting space there before we go into another activity again, because otherwise if we're doing that, we're helping the brain encode things, and the more things are encoded in time, then the more that the knowledge is embedded, that's there, it gets encoded in the brain better. And sometimes we're so into being so busy that we're just jumping from one meeting to the other that there's no time for the brain to just whoa, stop. I can't take all of it at the same time. You need to help me, and stop, pause, reflect, and then start again. Anybody else who wants to talk and say something?
Indeed, knowledge takes time, doesn't it? That's the difference between information and knowledge. If we want that deeper knowledge, it takes time. And I remember I was very stressed in my early years of work, and I took up yoga I was told it would help me reduce my stress. And initially it did that and calmed my body and calmed my mind. But if you do it regularly, it carries on into your daily work, that calmness. And I used to think that the only way I would get these insights is through sitting on a cushion and meditating. But when it became more of something I carried through in my work, I was more calm. I found that I can go for a walk and I can get some really good insights. And that's a sort of insight meditation, walking meditation. I know some people tell me they get that when they're in forests, or some get it when they walk in mountains, or some get it by the seaside, or some get it by an open field. But the insights come when you are calmed in body and mind, however that's achieved. And I think yoga is a great tool to do that.
One thing I notice is that a lot of people turn to yoga for the physical aspect of it, but there's a lot of it too that's very mental. But they also say that, at least in Chinese philosophy too, the only way to master your mind is to first master the body. So that's why whenever there's a yoga session, you need to do warm up,
Yes.
because you need to prepare the body so that all those things align, so that all that energy will flow up to right here where your brain is. And there's a lot of clarity that goes up. There's no blocks. And through warm up and stuff, you're able to let all those kinks get out of the way so that all that energy that needs to flow up flows up. And so, but a lot of the times we forget yoga is also a way to have clarity of mind, emotional clarity, mental clarity, self-regulation that we all need for emotional intelligence, isn't it? When we deal with all these CEOs, with our colleagues who are very resistant to change, those kinds of skills are important. And also just to be curious. We're very attached to our own ideas, that it's very hard to listen to other people. And if you're attached, when you're more about advocacy rather than inquiry, then you can't have collaboration. And so yoga sort of is a good way of regulating yourself. I mean, it gives one techniques. I mean, at least the mindfulness part, the meditation and all that, it allows one, provides techniques on how to regulate your mind, prepare it so that you don't overreact, or you don't explode, or there's still space to get other ideas, not just your own. More curiosity, more space, which is, and that's why detox is important. You detox what you don't need, and so that there's space to get in what you do need. So, any comments, violent objections to that? Does it sound so bye-bye?
I'm not a yoga practitioner, although I probably need to, because I'm becoming a man of a certain age, and going to the gym and throwing weight around is not so much a great idea anymore. But everybody that I know that is into yoga does not make a distinction between the mind and the body. That it's the reason why yoga is different than going to the gym is the gym is physical, or I'm over here working on my mind, whereas yoga was always seen as a complete act. You work on the mind to work on the body to work on the mind, kind of yin and yang, or whatever, whatever thing. So I'm not surprised. Anything you're saying doesn't surprise me, other than the fact that you as a practitioner, so there's a deeper level. Granted, mine is very PowerPoint deep in terms of what I know about yoga. I can spell yoga, and that's about it. But what is apparent with it is, if you're not working on your mind, you can't work on your body. And if you're not working on your body, you're not going to improve your mind. That's always been my understanding of yoga, in the esoteric way that I appreciate it. Over.
That's absolutely right. It's recommended that people start with physical yoga exercises to still the body. And breathing, not to forget the importance of breathing. There's a science in the Vedic science, there's the science of breathing as well. And the body and the breathing stills the body and stills the mind. But you are absolutely right, the two feed one another. And it's very, very powerful.
Actually, science has proven that the only thing that can lower the heart rate is the breath. I mean, not just breathing, it's controlled breath, conscious breathing. And also and whenever we focus our breath, I mean, when you do exercise, most of the time we do exercise, oh, we got to do 20 reps or whatever. But what's most important is actually the breath, not the exercise, it's the breath. Because when you exercise and move your mouth, you let that breath, create space in that muscle and all that. So it's the breath that's really important. And most of the time we forget about that when we're mindlessly exercising. So mindful exercise is important. But what I also wanted to say was science has proven that when we focus our thoughts on the body, physical sensations, what we touch, our feet on the ground and all that, it gives our chattering mind a break. I mean, if you just notice, if you just decide, oh, for 1 minute, I'm just going to focus on my hands, what's going on here, my neck, and all that stuff, you'll find out that this stops talking because it's constantly talking to us, even giving us negative thoughts that we don't really need. But they say that the only way, if you really want to you want to get out of your head, is to focus on physical sensations. And usually what's easily accessible is the breath. So
Yeah.
when you breathe and you're like, when you're in an uncomfortable situation like this, your heart is going like this because somebody just attacked you in an email or something. Breathe and you're feeling stuff here. And when you notice physical sensations, your mind stops. I mean, at least for a while, your mind focuses on what's going on here, that it stops here. So, and the thing is, the breath is free, easily accessible, and you can do it anywhere, really. Go to the bathroom, go to a corner, and you can actually, it's something that's easily accessible to everybody. But we forget to do it because it has to be intentional. It's conscious. I mean, we breathe obviously because we're alive, but it's conscious breathing that's what's important. And actually, they say in yoga that there is no yoga when you're not really focusing on the breath. What's important in a yoga session is the breath. It's not the postures or the asanas and all that. It's the breathing. Inhale, exhale, stop, inhale, then again. But it's the being conscious about the breath that's more important. So does that make sense?
Totally. And actually, I would add in my personal practice, the day that I do meditation or yoga, I work much better and much more in focus than the day I don't. It's amazing. It's such a big difference.
Yes. I'm also quite interested in what organizations, particularly knowledge-driven organizations, are adopting or have adopted this. It still seems to be in the minority, but increasingly, I mean, I'm very aware of organizations like Google, for example, that for many years now have encouraged yoga sessions for their people for all the reasons that we've been discussing today. But I don't know what your experience is, but mine is it still is in the minority. People are still far more time conscious and rush than taking a bit of time to relax and reflect and perhaps go have a bit deeper knowledge and insights. What's your experience with companies that are considering this as a tool, very powerful tool for knowledge workers, knowledge-driven organizations?
Does anybody have an experience?
Yeah, I do. This
Okay.
is Dawn. The last company I worked for, they actually had yoga twice a week, and we had massages on Fridays. So,
Very good.
so
Very good.
yeah, but it is a little hard to take away from your desk. Like if you knew there's going to be yoga, maybe you wear something that you can do yoga in so that it's not such a big like production to go join this activity, right? So maybe you don't wear something that you don't want to do yoga in that day if you plan ahead. So
Yeah.
Anybody else who had a similar opportunity or a similar experience in the office?
I remember during the pandemic at UNICEF, we had, I mean, it continued after the pandemic, but we had like regular meetings for meditation. And it was actually an Indian colleague. And it was really nice because it was really a way to start the day, and you could hear at any time if you don't have to be online to participate.
And what's the experience of online yoga? I don't know too much about that, so I'm keen to understand. Anyone experienced online yoga? Does that work well?
I'd say it's nice. It's nicer to be in person, of course, but there's also things that you could do with online yoga, especially you can still add music, stuff like that. But yeah, obviously in person is much better. And it's also being with other people is better because, well, it's hard to prove, I guess, but they say that when a group is together, all that vibration comes when you're exercising. Or not exercising, but when you're meditating together or practicing together.
Yeah, no, I mean, I have been online and in person, and the energy is a different one. It's really nice when you do it online because you can do it from home and you can do it at any time. But it's also really, really nice. Also, when you're in presential, you have someone who can guide you and help if you're doing something wrong that nobody would do when you do it online. But I think the energy in general is totally different.
And to answer your question, Ron, in my former office, of course, I was trying to promote yoga and it was very difficult. But I found out from colleagues that there are a lot of people who took yoga training. So I asked everybody, I said, would you be willing to give a free yoga class at lunchtime? So we found a place. And so I recruited all these yoga people and said, okay, this guy can do it once a month, and this guy can do it on the second month, second Tuesday, or so each person volunteered a week, a month to give a free yoga class to colleagues, and then eventually it caught on. But yeah, it took a while for it to be part of mainstream organizational activities. It was sort of like yoga was sort of like not considered a workplace activity, but I guess if you sort of need to educate your colleagues a little bit or be brave enough to say it doesn't have to be not mainstream. It could also be part of our organizational life. So I guess eventually after that, then there was volunteer Pilates, then there was volunteer breathing, there was volunteer stuff. So, but what I found was there are a lot of people in the organization who have done training and who are willing to just share their training without being paid. So that started something. So
I think the problem that management have is they can't measure this so quickly as they would like. And my answer to that is if only management would say, well, we'll give this a 6-month pilot. And it's difficult. How are we going to measure this? Frankly, how we're going to prove the benefits to the organization and the increased productivity or the quality of knowledge and quality of work that we do. But the only thing is for people to experience it themselves and then come back 6 months later and say, are you still doing this? What benefits does it have? If only management would give it 3 months, but preferably 6 months to let people experience and then see if it's made a real benefit for the organization to take this time.
So that might be an idea. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I find it looking at different contexts, I would find it rather difficult to change the mind of many people. But I must say that actually what brought me to yoga was work, because I was in emergency situations. You have to do a lot of exercise, and they really promote that. And I actually started in the Balkans. And in Kosovo, the chief of mission, he made a gym, and anyone who could do something would just go and train. And I started to do yoga there, and I did also kickboxing from another colleague. And these are two practices that have been helping me to help with the stress during the emergency years. So it's I mean, now I keep because it's a practice that has become part of my life. but I'm really I'm always thankful that I learning in a moment that I was dealing with so much stress, because it helped me a lot at the time.
Thanks, Rocio.
Yes, I came to yoga a long time ago. I was 21 and I went into a Catholic contemplative monastery, and
Wow.
I was searching for something. And luckily, I came across a book by a French Trappist monk, Deschanel, the Christian Yoga, 10 Steps of Christian Yoga.
Oh,
So I asked the novice master, and he said, I said I would like to practice this. And because it was Christian yoga, he agreed. But funny enough, it had all the essential ingredients. It was hatha yoga, so it had all the postures, the breathing exercises, the shutting down of the internal dialogue in order to create the inner silence. But I was also lived for a year in complete silence. So I had a year of silence, and yoga became very much part of my life. I then drifted away from practicing it formally, and I think what happens is you incorporate it into something inside you. You know, it's a kind of an awareness, and it's an awareness of the ability within you of being able to see things, to be conscious. And for a long time, I saw that as like a presence. In other words, all I had to do was take 10 of those very slow breaths, at the same time releasing all tension in every part of your body, letting go everything, letting go thoughts, letting go tension, letting go history, personal history, everything. Trying to just in 10 breaths, boom, getting down to that place where you are just the seeing, the watching, the observer, or whatever it is. But that is a very big thing inside you. It's a presence. Some people would say it's meeting the divine within you. You know, maybe I'm not sure what it is, you know. But it's worth doing, you know, very, very worth doing.
I'll completely resonate with that, Shay. Thank you.
Thank you.
that was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're coming to the end of this now. So unfortunately, we don't have time for meditation, but Ron and I do this monthly conversations about yoga knowledge. We have a channel called Yoga of Knowledge in YouTube. So if you're interested, feel free to just contact us so that we can share the channel with you. So thanks so much, everybody, for attending this, for being in this discussion with us. It's a passion for both of us. So it's nice to see that other people share our passion. So I'm hoping that we can come together again to discuss something that's a little bit out of the indirectly part of KM, but it still is KM related. So thank you, everybody, for this, and we'll see you again, hopefully another time. But if you want to stay a little bit more, feel free to also stay. I mean, you don't need to leave. But if you need to leave, I completely understand. If you have a few minutes, I just wanted to share that one benefit too of yoga is there are certain meditations that make you really, really powerful in the sense that nothing phases you at all. Like there's a meditation for patience, a meditation for anger, to control your anger, meditation for childhood stuff, things that accumulate anger from childhood, and there's a meditation to conquer your fears. And when you're dealing with a lot of resistance in the KM, in KM work, that is so powerful. Or when you're dealing with people who are disgruntled colleagues who are constantly trying to put you down, it's very handy to have these meditations as part of your arsenal to protect you from what you really don't need during the day. So if you're interested in things like that, feel free to let us know, and we'll see what we can do. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Ninas, for organizing this. That's fantastic.
Thank you, Ron. What an inspiration. 40 years in yoga. My gosh.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Nina. It's great to hear you all again.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Ninas.
Let me stop the recording, Ron.
Yes.